Oh, Derek and Jerry.
You know what?
Hey, Gary, we're gonna start. We're gonna start at 6. Okay. Hey, so it's 6 o'clock and we're gonna get started with this city council meeting. It's January 24th, 2023. And we are down at the mill in the Sawyer's Room, Main Street, Lake Stevens. This is a hybrid meeting. We have folks in attendance here in the mill, as well as folks online. This will be recorded and later published on our YouTube site. So with that, I would ask everyone to rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty.
And justice for all.
So now we got to whisper. Okay, so with that, let's get a roll call. Let's have deputy clerk Weaver do it.
Thank you so much.
Voice problems with.
I've been a little under the weather, so I'll turn this over.
Okay,
Councilmember Daughtry,
present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Present.
Council President Jorstad,
Present.
Councilmember Ewing,
Present.
and Councilmember Tagent.
I did receive word that Councilmember Tagent was not going to be able to attend tonight.
Move to excuse Councilmember Tagent.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, perfect. So, Council President, can we get a approval of the agenda?
Absolutely. In front of you, you have a copy of the agenda and also a walk-on item grant writer communication specialist that staff have asked to add to action this evening. Would appreciate a motion or questions or discussion.
I'll motion to add the grant writer to the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And then
Move
would
to
enter-
approve the agenda as amended.
we
Second.
have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mary. You have an agenda.
Perfect. So with that, let's go with city engineer Kim Clinkers to introduce a new employee.
This mic good to go?
Good to go.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kim Clinkers. I'm the city engineer. I'm here representing the Public Works Department to introduce our newest employee. This is Sean Bishop. He just began in January. He's a crew worker 1 in our stormwater department. And I have a quick little bio to read about him, and then he'll just come through for handshakes and well wishes. So Sean was born and raised in Lake Stevens, in Lake Stevens High School. After high school, Sean played a short stint of collegiate baseball down in Oregon. He later transferred to Eastern Washington University, where he majored in exercise science. In his free time, Sean lives a quiet life with his wife and their 2 German shepherds, and spends significant amount of time on his massive gardening hobby that has led him to new adventures into food preservation as well as healthier eating. He is grateful to be working for the city that he grew up in and is eager to learn and contribute all that he can while working in the stormwater department. Once again, this is Sean Bishop, and free to.
Welcome, Sean.
Good to have you, Sean. All right, good stuff. Let's move to citizens' comments. And we have 2 options for citizens' comments. We have folks here in person. If you filled out a green sheet and I have it, you'll be called on for citizens' comments. And then if there's folks online, if you will raise your digital hand, we will recognize you and bring you in. All citizens' comments are 3 minutes, and you can address the council on your pleasure. So with that, is there anyone online with their digital hand up? Nobody.
No.
Okay. So no one online. I do have a couple of folks in the audience. So let's start with Magda Hop. If you would approach the podium up there, say your name and address in 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Magda Hop and I live on Stitch Road. And I'm going to be reading, so I timed myself to stay within that 3 minutes. And I get nervous up here. Okay. So as we all know, elected officials have a responsibility to all of those that they govern. It's their goal to protect private property rights and to protect public health and safety. This can be done effectively by balancing the varying interests of property owners, vacationers, and the community. Over-regulating short-term rentals is bad for the economy. It means less tourism, higher prices for vacationers, more inconvenient stays for families, and less capital investment. For owners, the extra income can make the difference in improving their properties. For example, we made many improvements to our property, including our curb appeal, which we may not have done if we didn't have that extra income. A key point to keep in mind regarding complaints: private property is private property. As long as someone is not violating the rights of others or endangering them, he or she should be free to enjoy and use their own property as they wish. We should focus on enforcing ordinances related to noise, traffic, advertising, the number of occupants, problem hosts, and do so in a manner that treats short-term rental properties in the same way that they treat other homes. Historically, zoning has been used to protect property values, which disproportionately benefits the wealthy while making it harder for lower income residents to buy property in certain cities and neighborhoods. For example, I have an employee that could not afford to buy a home in Marysville unless he was able to rent out a room. And that is exactly what he did. It also encouraged him to improve his property so that it would be attractive for his short-term renting. And he did not want to be stuck with a long-term tenant that he didn't like or that didn't behave in a manner that was acceptable to him. And he definitely wanted to avoid all that goes in with eviction. Again, I want to stress that there are very few short-term places currently, and it would be too bad if over-regulating would prevent people from offering their spaces to people visiting residents that live here in Lake Stevens and forcing those visitors to stay in other areas outside of Lake Stevens or perhaps in hotels that don't offer that local experience that we have here. Most of our guests, personally, were the result of neighbors that were even in our neighborhood and families that live in Lake Stevens that had friends and family visiting them and having them stay at our home because they had no room. Please keep these things in mind when deciding on the final ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. And Gary O'Reilly.
I always start off by saying usually good morning, but I'll say good evening, Mayor, council members and staff. I'm Gary O'Reilly, 2514 85th Drive Northeast, M3 in the Point at Crosswater. That is the former site of the Hewlett Packard facility that we have 118 units in our condos, and Crosswater has over 400 homes. The intersection of 89th Street and Soper Hill is very dangerous, especially on a night like tonight. I have a letter that I will be happy to give to anybody from the president of our condo association highlighting some of the issues, but it's mainly the fact that it's very difficult. The lighting is terrible and the island juts out far enough that to make a turn onto it, you're almost in danger every time that you try and do that. We would love to have a change to it, either some striping or something done. A couple of us, one of them here in the audience with me, we would be willing to go up. We have our own yellow reflective paint and would be willing to paint it just so that you can get the boundaries on it. I know of at least 2 car accidents that have happened in the last several years, and I don't want anything else to do that. So that's our basic request. And then I'm going to share a disappointing comment about 89th Street. And that's the fact that the city of Lake Stevens and the city of Marysville entered into agreement in 2021 saying that when the road is constructed there on Soper Hill, that there will no longer be a left-hand turn into our development. We will have to go down through a roundabout and then either 85th or down to 83rd. There are a ton of folks that take the 89th Street exit to go beyond our development and go back to the back of theirs. So that's my comment. I hope that we can, at least in the meantime, get some type of striping up there to make it easier so that no one gets in an accident. And I can tell you, this is not an age thing. This is anybody driving. I don't care if they're 16 or if they're 81 or above. So thank you.
Can I just ask a point of clarification? 89th and Soper Hill Road, that's not the new roundabout. It's the intersection
It's before the roundabout.
to the east.
Yeah, and it's on upper east of Soper Hill, and it's directly across from the new Everett Clinic.
And it just goes south. It doesn't go into the Everett. Does it go into the Everett Clinic?
No, it will be. There will be a turn into westbound into the Everett Clinic.
It's the first turn into Crosswater, right?
Okay.
And I guess the only one other comment is I hope that they're planning to have at least a crosswalk there, because there are a ton of people that would love to just walk to the Everett Clinic instead of driving.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And Mitch Lambert.
Good evening. I'm Mitch Lambert, 9903 North Davies Road. Good evening, council. I'm here tonight to ask the council or one of your members to request your staff to look into what surrounding cities' policies are on view protection. What do other cities have to protect their views? Can Lake Stevens incorporate them to help protect all of our views we currently have so that all our lake and mountain views can start being protected? Same as the council considered when building downtown in North Cove. I think we all deserve the same consideration, protect our views. Is it right someone can put up 11,000 square foot house, 35 feet tall, just feet away from your house and block all your views that you have worked so hard to have? Please protect our lake and mountain view. Ask the staff to look into surrounding city policies. Please see what other cities have done to preserve views and consider view preservation protection for Lake Stevens property. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move forward to council business, council president.
Thank you. We'll start right here to my right with Councilmember Belcher.
Okay, thank you. Been working on the STR committee. We had a meeting last night, third meeting. It's going rather well, I think. We should be done here shortly. Attended the Snohomish County Cities dinner last Thursday night, where we did where we picked who was going to be going to the PSRC Transportation Board, Executive Board, all those different things that we have to supply people to. Had a couple of other council persons with me that night, including the mayor, Gary Peterson, and Mary Dickinson was there. It was nice to have a showing from Lake Stevens at that particular meeting. What else did I do? Community transit. We're working on, the biggest thing we're working on right now, there's two things, is the low emission vehicles, which is going to be problematic for any bus type city system because they just don't have the range that we absolutely need here in Snohomish County. I mean, if you think about it, try to get an electric bus out to Darrington. It isn't going to happen. So we're trying to figure out how to do all that. And there's a lot of studies going on about that. The other thing that we're working on that is going to impact everybody, anybody that goes to Seattle at least, coming in up, WashDOT is going to be closing 2 of the southbound lanes on I-5 for several weeks or months to do preservation of or replacement of the concrete. We're trying to, they're going to do that pretty soon. We're trying to push that off so that we can get the Linwood Link Light Rail open. So we can get people to the light rail instead of on buses going down the 2 lanes of I-5 that'll be left over. So we're trying to get WashDOT to kind of sequence that with us. And so we're talking with Sound Transit, WashDOT, and ourselves, as well as now we're getting ready to go to the legislature to try to force the issue. So that's what's going to be happening. The Revive I-5 is what you'll hear it called. I told them they need a tagline of "Don't go to Seattle." And that's a big thing that's happening, and it's going to affect most people that try to go south. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilman Peterson.
Yes, first off, I'd like to show my appreciation for Chief Bezizos for taking the leadership role with his chiefs and sheriffs in regards to the issues down in Olympia. I watched your Facebook little video and so forth, very appropriate. So I appreciate you doing that. Secondly, attended Planning Commission last Wednesday and handed the liaison roles over to Ryan. They elected a new chair, Michael Dewar, and a vice chair, Jennifer Davis. And I'll let Ryan talk about what they talked about, playing with Legos.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Gary for a very gracious and efficient handoff. I think the only thing I would add is, so following the meeting, there was a housing forum where Burt Consulting presented a housing action plan for the city. And I just want to say thank you to the citizens that came out as well as the commissioners. I found the meeting actually very entertaining and very fun. We got to lay out maps of the city and then place Legos representing housing blocks and gave everyone a chance to kind of lay out their ideal zoning map for the city. And in preparation for my first meeting, I went online, I did some research. I saw several citizen comments on social media, frustrated about not being heard regarding development in the city. And I just wanted to say, as my first meeting, it was a lot of effort was put into getting feedback from the citizens who attended. And we really do appreciate that feedback. So anyone that can make future meetings, I would highly encourage you to attend those forums and give your input, because we do care and we do listen. And also thank you to the city staff for all the great work they did.
Thank you. Councilman Ewing. Oh,
I just
sorry.
want to follow up with a couple of things. We do have a sewer utility meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So if anybody wants to zoom in or watch the proceedings on there, you're certainly welcome. And then the only other thing I would like to say is, we're coming up to our comprehensive plan and so forth, and we're talking about housing affordability, density. There's a couple of bills at the before the House and the Senate that would allow duplex, triplex, up to sixplex townhomes in single family neighborhoods. My opinion, kind of destroying our established neighborhoods. But I went to a housing symposium today, and it's really interesting about the dialogue that takes place. There's no dialogue that takes place about expanding our urban growth boundaries. And I want to give you a statistic. If this really doesn't alarm you, I don't know what will, but supposedly by 2050, we need 2.5 million housing units in this state. Do you know how many we built in the last 27 years? Which is the equivalent of going forward 27 years? 1.1 million. So if that doesn't scare you as to what's going to take place densifying our existing neighborhoods, I don't know what will, because if that continues, the neighborhoods that we know that exist today will not exist tomorrow. So just a little food for thought.
So if I could jump on that. So what you're saying is, if we don't have policies of expanding UGA, which we don't currently do, UGA meaning space that you can build, those 2.7 million houses have to go on top of the 1.2 we've already built.
Straight up.
Straight up.
Yes.
Oh, it could go down.
You could go down. Said the Submariner.
Yeah, yeah, the guy, the submarine guy. Anyway, food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ewing.
So I attended the short-term rental subcommittee meeting as an observer last night. So first I want to thank Russ and Jill. They did a very nice job of facilitating the discussion. And Connor Davis and Kim Daughtry did an outstanding job representing the Planning Commission and the council. So a couple of things that came up that I thought were good. One, I'll just point out, I had great difficulty finding out the time, date, and location of the meeting. And it's sad that if a city council member can't get access to basic information like that, I wonder what it's like for the citizens. I would respectfully ask that the February 6th, 2023 meeting, that's 5:30 in this room, that somehow be published. Gary Petershagen criticized our council subcommittee meeting, and correctly so, for the lack of transparency for that. But this new subcommittee is following the same pattern that we did and is not correcting the mistakes that we made. So I think we can do better. But I appreciated the discussion about enforceability and weaponization and not legislating, for example, neighbor disputes. And so I thought there was a really good discussion, and I hope that a good product comes out of that. And I'm confident with what I heard from the planning commissioner, Connor Davis, and from Kim Daughtry that we're gonna have a good product.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dickinson. We cannot hear you.
Now you can hear me. I know you can. It's been a while. So I want you to know why I'm not there tonight. That's very unusual. It's really strange to be sitting here in my house, but it's because of driving at night. I did go to the SCC dinner. It was fabulous, and I recommend it to all of you. It was really amazing to see all the council members from all over Snohomish County. I'm grateful that I got to go there. I also went to the library board meeting the same day, and I was thrilled to hear what's going on with our library, and the board is getting it together. They do have some more seats available, so if someone thinks they'd like to be on the library board, check it out. The library is going to be going to Stevens Creek Elementary. I always give it the wrong name. They're going to Stevens Creek Elementary 6 times to work with families and helping their kids learning how to read and to have them go through books together. And it's very supportive. And so here's a challenge to Mr. Riley, who's sitting there. I can see him. The Kiwanis Club is going to provide a meal for one of those events. And so their challenge is that all the other service groups, such as, of course, Rotary Club and the Lions Group, that they step up and also do that. So I think it'd be great if we work together and help those families who need that kind of support. The STR meeting was great. I agree with the fact that Kim Daughtry and Connor, is that his name? Yes, were really helpful. And thank you very much for coming, Councilmember Ewing. Tomorrow, the LSSD meeting will be at Stevens Creek Elementary. I can't wait to go and see what that school has been up to. It's an amazing school. So that's all I have to say. And thank you very much for listening. Wish I were there.
Thank you. Just one point of clarification. I know some people were in attendance tonight, hoping that there was going to be a item on the agenda, a proclamation honoring Kathy Holder, and we are not ready to move forward with that proclamation yet. So my apologies if there are folks here hoping to be a part of that. We hope to bring that to you soon. That's all I have.
All right, great. Thank you, Council President. For myself, I've got a busy couple weeks ahead of me with the legislative session that's in. I end up spending a lot of time watching and monitoring the legislation that's out there and speaking with our lobbyists daily to make sure that our legislative goals are being met, and then as well as testifying and trying to put out fires or create fires on other legislation. So that's what I'll be spending most of my time the next couple of weeks doing, as well as our council retreat and AWC action days. So let's move forward then on, looks like we have a city report, department report from Troy.
All right. Good evening, council and community. My name is Troy Stevens. I'm the IT director for the City of Lake Stevens. In the summer of 2022, the IT department requested to reclassify a vacant IT support specialist to a IT support analyst due to the need for a higher level function. Over the last 6 months, in recruiting a high caliber candidate with the right skill sets for the analyst level have been difficult. With that, for this reason, we will be casting a wider net, advertising for a support analyst or a IT specialist with the hopes of filling the support analyst role as our primary objective. In the event that we do not find a high qualified candidate to serve in a senior level position, we will be selecting a IT specialist that will be placed in a lower pay scale until we can get a development plan in place to where we can bring them up to the level that we need them to be at a senior level position. So that's kind of where we're at with that position. Do you have any questions?
All right, thanks, Troy. Appreciate the report.
Thank you.
With that, can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
You have a motion and a second to pass the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consent agenda passes and we'll move on to action item A first, interlocal agreement for Summit Conservation District with Shannon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Shannon Front. I'm the Surface Water Manager here at the City of Lake Stevens. Tonight, I wanted to present to you the 2023 scope of services with the Snohomish Conservation District. We renewed the interlocal agreement with the Conservation District last year. We entered into another 5-year ILA with them. This continued our 10-year partnership with the Conservation District. They support the city in carrying out our education and outreach and community participation requirements outlined in our NPDES Stormwater Municipal Permit. We entered into this agreement last year with the decision to review the scope of services annually here with council and evaluate staff's capacity to carry out this type of program. Essentially in-house or with minimal participation with the Conservation District. This year, we have evaluated our capacity along with other priority projects, and we've determined that it's in our best interest to continue utilizing the Conservation District to carry out the education and outreach here for 2023. Primarily, we have we created the surface water program last year. We've hired 2 new staff members and they're still pretty new to our program. We're still developing our program and working on process improvement. We have a lot of things going on in public works with the APWA accreditation and implementing ViewWorks. We really do feel like it's in the city's best interest to utilize the expertise of the Conservation District and work closely with them this year to learn from the things that they're doing and implementing and some of the aspects of the education program that work and maybe don't work and how we can tailor that better to developing our own program. I'm working with other leadership team here in Public Works, and we're developing a 3-year strategic plan. And as part of that plan, we will evaluate our partnership with the Conservation District and what that looks like moving forward. So with that, I really would like to open it up for any questions or discussion items. And if there's not any, I am asking for a motion to authorize the mayor to sign the 2023 scope of services.
Shannon, I got a question.
Yeah.
I've worked with the Conservation District a few times in the recent past. One of the things that they do is they go out and basically rebuild streams and take out the blackberries, put in the great plants that we, native plants and things like that.
Mhm.
Do we have any projects that we could do that to? I'm talking to one of the people that do that on for the tribes and have heard what they're doing. And I've never seen us do anything like that in this city. Now I realize you haven't been here that long, but
Mhm.
is there a way that we can come up with some kind of a project like that on some of our streams that we can redo and get rid of some of the invasive plants?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. We can, for this scope of services, we primarily use them to meet this education and outreach requirement and goal. But there are other services that the Conservation District is involved with. I'll give you a good example too. We did quite a bit of mitigation work just over here in North Cove Park. We did that in response to the project in September of 2021 of clearing out the outlet channel.
Right.
In developing that mitigation plan of the restoration of that stream bank and removal of invasive species, we did consult with the Snohomish Conservation District and their experts on it. I have been talking with them too. They're involved with helping us manage some of our beaver dams, and there is opportunity for possible stream restoration projects in things that we've identified that might be a priority project, where if they have grant funding to work in this area, that we might be able to partner with them on projects. So there are opportunities like that, but we don't have anything specifically identified right now.
Okay, thank you.
Shannon, I appreciate you guys kind of taking the reins, so to speak, in working on a plan to get this in-house. So I think that's a very positive step. So thank you.
Okay, yeah. And I will note that, as we develop this strategic plan and we really outline what the next 3 years look like for this program, that'll be something that we'd be sure to come back to council with, so that in subsequent years, if we still continue to use this partnership with the conservation district to some capacity, or what that may look like, we're having that conversation up front.
Thank you. I move to authorize the mayor to execute the interlocal agreement with the Snohomish Comfort Conservation District.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion passes. Let's move to the added item B, which is the grant write discussion. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, council, mayor and staff. Bringing before you tonight a request to establish the classification for the grant writer position that the council had requested. As we looked at this through the budgeting process, we had put a placeholder in for a salary based on comparable and salary classes for this type of a position. After the budgeting was completed and the salary survey was complete, we found that this position now should be at a different classification. And so that's what we're bringing back to council tonight under your procedures, that you would make recommendations for a change in salary class. There is a budget impact. It increases the authorized budget for planning and community development for 2023. But we would expect that there would be offsets to that budget increase with the position bringing in revenue to the city for different projects, and potentially able to claim some grant funds for administrative costs also to pay for that salary. And there's also a possibility that we have some other programs where we have a media consultant that we can reduce some of their time and recoup some of that cost going towards this salary. So looking for council's blessing tonight to move forward with this classification, and this would be subject to a future budget amendment. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Wright. I do have a question. Do we have any sort of sense of what the industry standard is for how long it might take to recoup some of that cost in either grants that are awarded or admin costs? Or what do we feel like is reasonable?
Sure. So let me think about this in terms of grants that we've received over the last couple of years. So we haven't tagged those specifically to staff salaries, but we've received several $1 million in grants that would otherwise come from general fund as an ancillary source to any impact fees or other pots of money. So we haven't done an analysis for a one-to-one correlation, but figure if this person brings $1 million in revenue in, even in year one, that's a recoup on the council's action to bring that position on.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I got it. Approve the range. I move to approve the range and pay scale for proposed grant writer, communications specialist position subject to a future budget amendment.
A second.
You have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, thank you, Russ.
Thank you, council.
And let's move to discussion items. The first one is the council retreat agenda, and it's been just handed out to you. And Gene will take that on.
Great. Thank you so much, Mayor. Council, the retreat will be held this year on February 9th and 10th, and it'll be up at the Hotel Bellwether in Bellingham, Washington. The address is there for you. It's in the Marina area, if you're familiar with that area. Lori Erickson will be coming to help facilitate that. You might have met her at lean training for the city, and she's facilitated other events that we've had. So she'll be coming up to help us out. On Thursday, We will have approximate start time of 6 PM and go to 9 PM. We'll be doing a recap of the 2022 council retreat takeaway items, things that we were supposed to be working on. And then over the last year, we've put together a list of 15 council priorities as well, and we've been tracking that list. I know former council president Ewing helped us create that and been tracking that as well. So we'll be going over that with updates. We'll celebrate our 2022 successes. And we will do a 2022 executive retreat recap. Any questions? Okay, on Friday, we'll get up and after it early with that 8 AM start time. And we will have food provided at both Thursday and Friday. And we hope to be done around 3:30 or 4 PM on Friday afternoon, so people can get home to their families and the like. We'll be discussing revenue sources for the TBD. We'll be working to try and distill down what we'd like to have in the industrial area, and we have a consultant on board that will be talking about that. Or Russ will probably lead that discussion, actually. We'll be talking about 91st Street, the initial design. We'll bring some history of that area. We'll bring the any beautification plan items and comp plan items that we've done in the past that relate to that area. And we'll be having a consultant on board in the near future to help us with that. We'll be talking about mission, vision, and values for the city. 20th Street Southeast Economic Development. And then we kind of slide into some housekeeping measures. Every year we talk about the council rules and procedures, and a lot of these will fall into that category. Communication with council, council meeting times, council liaisons, council breaks. Currently, we have the summer break, so we'll talk about that and how that's working and the length of that, if the length is still sufficient or if it's too long. And then, of course, everything else that's in the council rules procedures, we'll go over all that, just like we do every year. And then discuss a remote option to attend council meetings for a long-term basis. Human services is a newer topic for us. We're going to talk about what we have currently, what we're short on, what we might need to be doing, and how we're tracking what we're doing. So we want to get on top of that before we have issues. And a lot of our cities that are close by have been taking some steps. We have some things in place already, but we'll be visiting that for the first time that I recall in detail. So it's a really good topic. And then we'll close out by takeaways and wrap up items. Questions, additions, or deletions?
Anything on there you not seeing that you want to see?
I suppose this would kind of fall under maybe communication with council, but I was kind of hopeful that we could get kind of a read on where we're at with litigation issues.
Like specifically with sewer or
Everything.
okay.
Is there a way to do an executive session up there?
We can do an executive session up there, right?
Well, if there's pending litigation, we would have to have Greg call in or somebody to represent the legal side of things. I'll talk to Greg here in the next couple of days and see if that's possible to do that. If he's available, certainly. Okay.
If not, can we add that to a upcoming meeting or workshop agenda?
Oh, sure.
Great.
I'd like to do it up there just so that we, our plan was to try to keep February council meeting light. So let's try to figure that out for the retreat.
Yep, I'll do it.
Any other subjects?
So under the council liaisons, I'm assuming we can talk, we're going to be talking about our communications with the boards and commissions.
Yeah.
And I guess under the TBD, the revenue sources. I know we have a transportation plan, but are we also talking about some of the things that are going to take place?
Well, do we want to bond? What do we want to do with that money? That kind of discussion.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking, yeah, we already passed that.
Yeah. The revenue source.
We had a short discussion.
Right. Yeah.
Mayor, can I just mention, with this retreat coming up, then we're not going to meet on February 7th, correct? So,
That's the plan.
yeah, unless something comes up that we need to meet, I think we're going to cancel that workshop. So no meeting next week because it's the 31st. No meeting on the 7th. We'll have our retreat on the 9th and the 10th. And then probably cancel the 14th as well because of AWC. So just keep that in mind.
So then our next time we would be together would be a workshop on the 21st.
Correct.
Pending
Anything that comes up.
necessary.
Yeah,
Well, there's potential that could be a special meeting if we have to get something done.
yeah.
If something pops up, we can always do a special meeting. All right, anything else you want to see added to the agenda? All right, perfect. Good job, Dean. Thank you. All right, and the discussion item we've all been waiting for. The very well prepared Kim Clinkers for the capital projects and transportation benefit district plan.
Good evening. I think Kelly's gonna help me get transferred over. Okay, so I'll hit share my screen. Thank you. Okay. You know how I can see my notes on the presentation?
So the wireless mics are cool. First night using them. Yeah. And the green light, you know, it's yeah, I think so. Thanks, right?
Okay, thank you for your patience. Sorry, I have a presentation prepared and I have a lot of notes in the presentation to overview. So I'll try to do double clicking here. All right. I think we're good. So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kim Clinkers. I'm the city engineer. Thank you for this opportunity to present the Public Works 2023 work plan for our upcoming capital and transportation benefit district projects. There is no requested action this evening, but please feel free to jump in with questions during the presentation, and there will be an opportunity for open discussion at the end of the presentation. Okay, so the first objective for this presentation is to overview the upcoming capital and TBD projects. Next, I will review the proposed 2023 work plan and discuss staffing resources. The last objective is to present constraints and alternatives for discussion. To address the why, the Public Works Department wants to support open and clear communication to council and the community regarding upcoming projects. This is the first step to help manage expectations so stakeholders can understand when and how these projects will be constructed, in addition to understanding some constraints related to project delivery. Ultimately, my goal is to not significantly overpromise and underdeliver. I do want to keep pressure on and the team motivated, but I also want to be dependable and reliable. So next, I would like to take a minute and quickly introduce you to the us that I am referring to. If you're not familiar, I wanted to introduce, oh, wait, did this? Are we good? Okay, thank you. So this is a slide to introduce the Engineering Division of Public Works. As seen on the left, this is a section of the city's organizational chart that was included in the 2023 annual budget. This section represents the Public Works Department. The Engineering Division of Public Works is circled in red and shown in the center. Our team includes me as the city engineer, Eric is our capital projects manager, and Whitney is our engineering tech. Our two inspectors are primarily in the field. Phil inspects the city's capital improvement projects, and Travis inspects private development projects and other utility work within the right-of-way. So this is the team that is committed to meeting your expectations for project delivery, and I want to set them up for success. So let's start reviewing upcoming capital and TBD projects. All right, so as a quick background, before we jump into this slide, last September, Public Works worked with the Parks Department to create a 6-year plan with priority capital improvement projects for transportation, parks, facilities, and surface water. Nearly 50 projects were identified over the next 6 years, totaling almost $80 million. Each project was evaluated, scored, and prioritized based on a standardized set of criteria. For example, sidewalk projects were evaluated for zoning, roadway type, accident history, adjacent facilities, grant eligibility, and secured funding. So with each project scored and prioritized, staff provided a recommended list of projects for 2023 during the annual budget process in October. As referenced in the staff report, it was assumed that the available budget for capital projects would constrain the final project list for 2023. Good news and bad news, that wasn't the case. As a result, the project list and corresponding map shown on the screen identify the capital projects that were approved with the 2023 budget. A few notes, 7 of these projects were budgeted in 2022 and rolled forward into this year. Also, the 3 projects highlighted in red are not currently included in the 2023 budget, as grant funding has not yet been secured. But once secured, the projects were intended to come back to council as a budget amendment, which represents $4.1 million. For the purposes of this presentation, these projects are included because the grant funding is reasonably expected, but the timeframe is dependent on legislative action. So to summarize this slide, there are 39 projects shown totaling $12.2 million. That includes the $4.1 million that we're expecting from grant funding. These projects span varying phases for this year, including some are targeted for planning, while others are for design, and others are for construction. So on the map on the screen, the schools are shown in orange for reference. There are 13 transportation and sidewalk projects shown in red. The red circles are intersection improvements. There are 16 parks projects, which are shown with the yellow stars. 8 facility projects are shown with the green pentagons, and there's 2 surface water projects shown with the blue waves. Finally, I wanted to note that 3 of the transportation projects have over $10.6 million of grant funding expected, and there are 5 parks projects that have over $3.5 million of grant funding expected as well. Some of these grant funds need to be utilized this year, while others are available until 2026. So that's a quick summary of the budgeted 2023 capital projects. I'm going to move on to the TBD projects unless you guys have any quick questions about this current slide. Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on, this slide highlights the TBD projects. As you know, the community supported the TBD funding in the November general election. This funding will support additional capital projects for the next 10 years, including safe walkway and sidewalk connections to schools, street maintenance for high volume roads, and traffic congestion relief. As discussed in the previous slide, each potential TBD project was evaluated, scored, and prioritized based on a standardized set of criteria. The finalized list of TBD projects shown above was included in Resolution 2022-10 to provide a TBD ballot proposition to the voters. The projects are ordered in their priority ranking, so the sidewalk projects at the top of the list scored higher than the projects towards the bottom. There are 23 TBD projects totaling $32.9 million, plus additional funding will be dedicated to the annual pavement preservation program. The corresponding map shown on the screen identifies the location of the TBD projects for the next 10 years, with the schools shown in orange for reference. So the TBD 0.02% sales tax will be effective April 1st. This funding will begin to accumulate and support more TBD projects in the following years. The Public Works Department plans to advance the higher priority sidewalk projects each year as the funding and workload allows. And that is a quick summary of the TBD project for the next 10 years. All right, so let's see. Next, this slide is a summary of both the budgeted 2023 capital projects and the TBD projects that we just overviewed. There are 60 projects in total. To summarize, the Public Works and Parks departments have identified an abundant amount of priority capital improvement projects located throughout the city. The Public Works and Parks departments are expected to secure more than $14 million in grant funding over the next several years. And also, with the passing of the TBD, additional funding will be available to support more sidewalk, trail, and roadway projects. So the key takeaway so far is that we have a significant amount of projects, public interest, and secured funding to support these projects. So this led us to analyze our available staffing resources to identify potential constraints for delivering this many projects. Next, I will quickly overview how we analyzed our available staffing resources. Once again, here is the engineering division of Public Works. I have identified a percentage of work hours that each staff is generally available to support capital projects. Eric is our one and only capital projects manager, and Phil primarily inspects capital construction projects, so most of their time is dedicated to capital projects. As mentioned previously, our other inspector, Travis, primarily supports private development projects and right-of-way permits. In case you're wondering why Whitney and I have a lower percent of available hours for capital projects, I'm not sure if you can read it on the screen, but I have 20% of my time for capital projects and Whitney has 50% of her time. So her and I are also concurrently working on other tasks, including APWA accreditation, finalizing the ADA transition plan and correcting ADA deficiencies, reviewing and responding to citizen requests, coordinating with the school district to identify school zone safety and signage improvements, establishing a standardized traffic calming policy, creating a multi-year pavement preservation program, and updating the engineering design and development standards from 2009, to name a few. In general, these percentages translated to an amount of available working hours that each staff is available to support capital projects. To estimate the amount of staff time needed for each capital project, we calculated 7% of each project cost to represent staff hours for project management. As you can imagine, this turned into an extensive Excel spreadsheet exercise. Don't worry, I won't review the ins and outs of this analysis, but I will highlight the outcome. This scenario included the 39 budgeted 2023 capital projects, plus the 3 higher ranked additional TBD sidewalk projects. The right columns allocated staffing hours per department. It is important to note for parks projects, the Parks Department works through the planning and conceptual layout phase, And Public Works will advance the final design and construction of the parks capital projects. So when comparing the amount of available working hours versus the hours needed to support these projects, we confirmed a major constraint for project delivery. This analysis highlighted that 23 consultant contracts would be needed to complete the work, and 17 capital projects would be under construction in 2023. When looking at the staffing resources, the Public Works Department would be 150% over available working hours and understaffed by almost 1.5 full-time employees. This was not setting us up for success or the ability to meet community expectations. So our team took this analysis and met with the mayor and the city administrator in December. We overviewed the priority projects and constraints and presented a proposed 2023 work plan that I will review next. So now we're on to the second presentation objective, which is to review the proposed 2023 work plan. I can stop for a minute if you guys have any quick questions. Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so first I wanted to highlight the proposed revisions from the budgeted 2023 capital projects. The top left table includes 6 projects that we would propose be postponed to a future year. In addition, the Festival Street project is a rollover from 2022 that is complete, and we just need to finalize payments with a contractor. 3 of these transportation projects are lower priority compared to others. And then the grant funding for the 16th Street multi-use path is delayed at this point. The table to the right includes 3 additional projects that are proposed for 2023 that were not included in the original budget request. These include ongoing projects like the wayfinding and gateway signs. And then that's the additional TBD sidewalk project that we would like to add along 91st Avenue. And then the Parks Department has coordinated with us about some improvements to the splash pad that we think would be reasonable to address this year. And then in addition, the table on the bottom includes 8 projects with revised scopes or phases for 2023. The proposed revisions are largely driven by delayed grant funding. For instance, the South Lake Stevens multi-use path phase 2 and 3, there was $3 million anticipated to be budgeted for this year. We believe that funding will be delayed. So we do have $100,000 that we're planning to do some preliminary survey and planning for this project. But that does translate to $2.9 million that we will probably not be spending this year. In addition, I believe that the Eagle Bridge Park Phase 2 project is anticipated to receive grant funding, but that is delayed as well. So instead of spending almost $1 million this year, we're proposed to spend about $100,000 this year. So in total, these revisions between postponing some projects, adding a handful of projects, and revising the scope on 8 projects represents a change in $5.6 billion, but doesn't significantly reduce the overall count of the capital projects, but it does reduce the anticipated expenditures. So this project list and map represents what Public Works is proposing for our capital and TBD projects for 2023. There are 33 projects totaling $6.6 million. There are 11 transportation and sidewalk projects, including 3 TBD supported projects, which are shown in the teal hatching. The top 2 TBD projects were already budgeted for this year, but we added the additional TBD sidewalk project along 91st Avenue. Then we still have 13 parks projects, which are shown with the yellow stars, 7 facility projects shown with the green pentagons, 2 surface water projects shown in blue waves. So overall, we still have a large number of projects we're proposing, which will serve multiple areas of our community, but the workload will be more manageable for our current staffing. So this slide is the same list of proposed capital and TBD projects for 2023, but identifies which phases of the proposed projects are planned throughout this year. The 3 TBD supported projects are highlighted again with teal. with quarter 1 through quarter 4. Blue represents which projects would be under the planning and conceptual layout phase. Yellow represents the design phase and green represents the construction phase. If you can see, there are 2 rows that have kind of a gray overlay, which align with the school zone improvements and the traffic calming projects. And those ones are going to bounce between various project phases throughout the year, since there are multiple smaller projects that will be implemented throughout the year. So in summary, there are 5 projects that will only be going through the planning phase this year. There are 13 projects proposed throughout the design phase for this year. And then there are 15 projects proposed for construction this year. For example, Sunset Park, the Festival Street Restroom and Concession Building, and the Powerline Park Trail are larger projects that are wrapping up design and will be slated for construction this year. Overall, this is a nice balance of varying project phases throughout 2023, and several design projects from this year will roll into construction next year. Okay, so we made it to the third and final presentation objective, which is to present some constraints and then open it up to discuss potential alternatives moving forward. So this slide is to review constraints for project delivery and to facilitate discussion for potential alternatives. Some constraints facing the engineering division include limited staffing resources, as we have only 1 dedicated capital projects manager and 1 capital inspector. In addition, Eric advanced to the capital projects manager position last year, and Whitney and I both joined the city last fall. So we are a new team currently working on process improvement and efficiencies. And as you know, the parks separated from Public Works last year and is its own department with independent plans, priorities, and goals. And the Public Works Department will continue to support parks capital projects throughout the design and construction phases. Another constraint is programming projects to meet existing grant conditions. The priority is to utilize grant funds and reduce our local contributions. So we want to ensure that our proposed program aligns with the available grant funds. An additional constraint is adequate time for clear and frequent communication. In my experience, when we are overburdened with too many projects, communication is one of the first aspects that drops off because we are too focused on just pushing more and more projects out. It is important to keep council, our citizens, the school district, utilities, and other stakeholders informed during project development and construction. This will be achieved with quarterly staff reports to council and updated project websites. The final constraint is the volume of consultant contracts. The answer cannot always be let's hire someone else to do the work, because we then become overburdened with managing too many contracts and consultants and lose effectiveness altogether. In addition, we want to be mindful of the amount of concurrent projects under construction throughout the city, especially with WashDOT's large construction projects along Highway 9 this coming year. So those are some constraints facing the engineering division from Public Works. Some alternatives that will be open for discussion is to just reduce the number or scope of proposed projects, which is what we've done a quick analysis on the budgeted 2023 capital projects and have come with a revised list of proposed projects that will better suit the capacity of our current staffing level. In addition, there is the option to add additional staff to deliver more projects. We've talked about that internally, and it does seem that the additional TBD funding could potentially be used to fund an additional project manager to work specifically on TBD projects. So we can talk about that, and that probably lends to the discussion about if we want to bond to have that additional funding more readily available, or wait till that accrues over time over the next year or two. An additional alternative for consideration is just to reallocate current staffing resources to focus more on capital projects. But then the downside to that is we have a long list of other tasks that we do want to work on, and that would pull from our productivity in regards to those tasks. So I think that kind of brings us to my closing slide. In summary, I have overviewed our proposed 2023 work plan, which includes reducing the number of projects and the scope of other projects to fit within our current staffing capacity and resources. And the intent of this presentation is to allow council the opportunity to provide feedback on the proposed work plan and discuss potential alternatives for consideration. So I will open it up for some feedback at this point, or questions, please.
I have a question.
Sure.
So it's a threshold question. Given the numerous variables that are involved with forecasting and projecting, is it even possible to do an apples to apples comparison between alternatives like adjusting project scheduling versus bringing on additional people to try and adhere to, the schedule that was originally planned?
Yes, that's a good question. We've been running different scenarios and having multiple Excel spreadsheet exercises going. I think at this time, we do want to have a proposed plan so we can kind of focus our attention for 2023 and start lining up projects and priorities. So I think today or in the near term, it would be appreciative if council could provide direction on our proposed work plan. But on the other hand, I do think that we do have the capacity with additional staffing to handle more projects. And we are definitely excited about the TBD projects and all the sidewalk projects that will be coming from that, because there's a lot of community interest and it will greatly improve our community and save access with the additional sidewalks. So I think that's something we could have additional conversations about, specifically what that position looks like and how they would get plugged into the team. But yeah, it is becoming apparent that an additional staff member would greatly help deliver these projects and stay on track and meet expectations, which is one of my primary concerns right now. I think what's currently budgeted is too much. So this is the first step to just clue you guys in to know like where we're coming from, because we do want to be set up for success and we do want to meet expectations of council and our citizens. So yeah, we are happy to come up with a proposed staffing request for additional staff that would fit well.
Okay, thank you. And so just to kind of elaborate, to better explain my thought process, what I'm ultimately curious about is, can we look and see what would the cost be if we pushed projects out, if things were put off, does the cost go up? Does it go down? How does that compare to bringing on additional resources now to help push things through faster? Ultimately, what's a more effective use of, budgetary resources to accomplish these projects? So you don't have to answer that, but
Sure.
that's kind of the motivation behind my question and what I'd ultimately be interested in seeing if we can put an analysis like that together.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your feedback. And I ran through some of this presentation with the mayor earlier today, and I do remember at this point that it would be, I could have explained a little bit more about how we prioritized the projects that we kept on the list and how we decided to punt some projects into future years. And I think the proposed list of projects, most of them do have grant funding that we want to make sure we don't miss out on. We don't want to leave money on the table. So those definitely are projects we're going to try to hit hard. And then there's other projects that we're already in the middle of design, and there is a lot of community interest to see certain projects get built. So those are higher priority projects as well. So we had kind of gone through some exercises to figure out what projects definitely need to stay on the list and which ones potentially, would be effective to kick down the road. But I do appreciate your feedback, and I'll take that back to our group, and we can think about it a little bit more and see what makes sense moving forward.
So yes, it will get more expensive. And two, the other discussion becomes, do we lose funding because we didn't spend it? Yeah, and especially with federal funds, you've got a certain time period. If you don't action on those funds, then they go somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, and that at a kind of visceral level, that was my thinking, but if there's a way to put together numbers, so we could say if we bring on extra people, get these done now, in the long run, it saves us this much, that'd be very helpful.
Yeah.
I think I seem to remember during budget conversations, talking about the TBD revenue and that there were admin funds available through that revenue to sort of bolster the staff to be able to take on those projects. Do we know yet what that looks like? Or I know we don't start.
Like a percentage of the funds, how much can be used towards admin?
And when, I know we don't start collecting funds until
We start collecting in April, we start receiving in July.
Okay.
I don't know the admin percentage question.
But we can get it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can
Yeah.
absolutely get it.
But that's there. That's
Mhm.
something that could be used to help offset the cost of necessary staff to get the work done. Okay.
Yeah, but if you look at the percentage, no matter what the percentage is, it's gonna be low. For the admin. And it's not gonna, as I think with what we're getting out of the TBD, it's not gonna be that much to. Get another staff person, I don't believe. It's not those rough numbers that I'm thinking of in my head.
Sure, but it'll augment.
It will augment
Yes.
it, but the other thing is if we go out for bond, when we have a discussion however we're going to do that, when we have our discussion at the retreat, that might be able to handle that better than just a small percentage of what the TBD input is.
I'll tell the council my thought process on this is, when you looked at the numbers, we're 1.4 short FTEs to do the current project, current budgeted projects. When we look at the amount, when we did the budget, we didn't know that the TBD passed. So, my thought process, we have this TBD, we have citizens who want to see those projects get going. We also have federal money coming in with the roundabout money as well as some TIV stuff down here in Main Street. And there's admin fees that can be taken off of that to help fund positions as well. What I would like to see us do is bring on a project manager who can focus on not solely on TBD, but mostly on TBD and on the federal side, because the federal reporting for that money is going to be a higher bar than the state reporting also. So you've got to have a project manager there who's focused on the federal stuff. So I'd like to see us bring on a project manager paid for out of TBD federal funds early, so that person can plan the projects. And then maybe 2 quarters later, bring on an extra Phil. What's his position title?
Yeah, he's the capital projects inspector.
Inspector, to be able to work with that project manager to be in the field doing those inspections on the projects that person's planned. That's my thought process on how we can fill this void on being able to provide these projects, not lose grant money, and get the citizens the safety and capital projects they're expecting.
So I can understand basically what the thought process is. Can we at the retreat have a little bit better synopsis of that, or not even synopsis? Can we get into the weeds on that a little bit to make sure we understand exactly where
the money would come from?
Yeah, how much it is, where the money is going to come from, how much from each pot, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What your thinking is. I don't know what's, actual sometimes goes different, but and I'm assuming that the 2 people that you're talking about bringing on is something that she wants.
Right.
And that's the right people at the right place. So I would like to, maybe take just a little bit of time on the retreat to see just a little bit more detail on that. I mean, I understand the concept, but
We could bring that back and talking with Barb, the finance director, there is no actual percentage that can be allocated. We can
for admin.
use the monies for admin costs. So it's a decision that we could make, the council could make to hire those positions or not hire those positions using the TBD fund. But we'll bring that back and have more robust conversation at the retreat.
Okay.
I do have the cost for the capital projects manager. that I've calculated. So to hire for a full year would be with benefits around 166 per year. If we hired one this year immediately in Q2 for 9 months, that would be 125,000-ish. Plus setup costs about $2,500 and maybe some other setup costs that I'm unaware about.
In today's marketplace, how long would it take us to bring that person on?
That's one, yeah, a realistic concern.
60 days, but to 90 days, and then, training. However long training takes.
Do we have anyone internally that is capable of that?
Project management.
Right.
Kim would probably be better to answer that than me.
I think that was the mayor's first question in December when we kind of gave him our problem statement. Do you have another Eric hiding in the corner? Which we don't really. We could still think about it a little bit more, but that would be ideal to promote internally.
That's good to know. I mean, as far as bringing people up and getting them trained and giving them opportunities, so.
I do have a external candidate that's been wanting to come to the city that is a capital projects PMP and works for another city right now. So some direct recruiting potential with this position.
Well, if we can rip off another city, yeah. Go.
Exactly, right? That was my thought. Then anybody already be trained.
And they tried to do it to us. Let's go ahead. We actually talked about that at the SEC dinner. You robbed me of my, sorry.
I do have the resolution that went along with the TBD. Initially, I haven't read through all of the pages of it, but I did previously see that the costs, this does include that all costs, the cost of all necessary design, engineering, financial, legal, and other consulting services, inspection and testing, administrative and relocation expenses, and other costs incurred in connection with the foregoing project shall be deemed as part of the cost for the projects, and that the city council shall determine the application of monies available for the project so as to accomplish as nearly as may be practical all of the projects. And then it continues, but it seems like it allows for most anything and everything related to support these TBD projects in terms of staffing and resources to get them delivered. But that would be something that city council, we could continue the conversation with and get direction about how that looks and what makes the most sense.
It almost seems reasonable. Are you sure the legislature meant that?
I think the mayor signed it.
Even more. How are you feeling about the proposed projects? We've got to scale down with what we've got.
Well, I'd like to actually see the list. Just one more, because reading it up there was really hard.
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see the list, but from what you said and what I took in, I'm fine with the list. I think it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, I have my own personal thoughts on priorities, but that's not the point. I'm not, we make the rules and you do it. So I understand that. And if you came up with those priorities based on everything you talked about, well, I get it. So I don't have a problem with any of those. I did have a little bit of a question on one of the parks things, and I'm not sure what's going on. I didn't see anything that had to do with Frontier Park in there for 2023. Are we not doing anything in
Let's see here.
Frontier Park for
I'm looking at the
2023?
wrong slide.
I think it was.
So I think Frontier Heights Park Phase 2
Okay.
is, the first one under parks, and that one
Like I
is,
said, I couldn't read it, so.
yeah, no problem. I think we're planning to continue design throughout this year. I can check my spreadsheet real quick.
Well, that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I
good
think
enough.
that there are several
Right.
grants for that one. Are there challenges with design or?
We as parks have signed one grant agreement. We have 2 additional incoming that we'll still need to sign. Those need to be signed before we can start the permitting process, and permitting can take quite a bit of time. And so we're at the point right now where we're pretty solid on the pretty picture and the 30% design. Now it needs to be built out with engineering. So that takes time as well. So with that process, construction is not anticipated to start this year. It will be next year.
Okay, thank you.
And I think, thank you, Sarah. And I think looking at the total project cost for that specific project, it's $1.9 million. So it's a very large project. And I assume there's permitting and it will, take most of this year to work on that design. And I do believe, there's about 3 grants that are going to be allocated to that project. And it looks like one of them has a deadline of December 2026. So we're not super constrained to advance that one as soon as possible because we have some float to be able to focus on the design this year and then get it constructed next year.
All right, thank you.
I think I just want to make sure that if we are postponing projects, that we're not then creating a bigger problem next year or the year after, that we're also looking at staffing to meet the need and the proposed projected need, because we're kind of pushing those down. So.
Yeah.
Assuming we're all keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was definitely a lessons learned over the last couple months. For next year's budget process, we'll really have a refined and attainable project list to propose for 2024 and be clear about what we can hit for design and construction. And we do have a 6-year capital projects list, and we'll just continue refining that. And then also encompassing the TBD projects, which, when we started the budget process this last year, we weren't sure how that was going to play out. So I think this will all help us be more prepared as we move into next year and future years.
Makes sense. I just want to thank you for an incredibly well-developed presentation. Developing the problem, identifying the problem, and coming to us with scenarios and the data behind those scenarios and how you came up with those, I think was incredibly helpful and helped me really conceptualize where you're at and what you're dealing with. So great presentation. Thank you so much.
Our mayor, Mary's got her hand up.
Mary, go ahead.
I appreciate
Yes, thank you very much. One thing I'm concerned about, and thank you again, Kim, this is fabulous. Our staff works so hard. I want you not to think ever that I don't appreciate it. The $30,000 for Cedarwood Recreation Center, that seems low to me. That's one question. And then the other one is, I'm looking at this list. Thank you for showing it to us. And I don't see 117th Street on there. Is that not something we were going to do sidewalks for? Those are my 2 questions.
Sure, no problem. Thank you. So since I'm on this slide right here, I can address your first question about Cedarwood Recreation Center. I do believe that we're expecting about $1 million grant from the legislative funding.
Right, okay.
I don't think that that's been secured yet.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, there is $30,000 planned for this year to start some preliminary planning and conceptual with the Parks Department. Sarah, do you know more specifically if you want to jump in with where the current status is?
I can. So we have an open RFP in search of a partnership so that we can evaluate what that potentially could be. We're at the point where we have not started even a conceptual design for what that building would be. And so that would be the processes. We still have a long ways to go with that conceptual building, with the engineering, and then with permitting to get to that construction phase. So this year we have the small the placeholders so that we can begin that project. If and when we get to the point of bids for entering contracts, that amount could fluctuate, but we feel comfortable with that number today.
Okay, thank you. And 117th?
Yes. So I'll flip back to the TBD projects.
Okay, we're getting there.
Slide.
So
it looks like it's the 4th project down 117th Avenue.
Okay, good.
And 26. It's about a $1.2 million project, but it is a higher priority TBD funded project.
Right. Okay.
That one's going to take probably about a year to finalize the design and acquire the necessary right of way and then get everything
Right.
for a construction,
Right.
big construction project
Right.
the following year.
Okay, very good. Between 91st and 117th. Those two yell at you. You just know there are a lot of kids going down those streets and you worry about them because there's schools all over the place there. But thank you. I thought I'd seen it before and then it disappeared. Okay. All good. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback.
Steve, did you have something? You didn't? Okay. Any other questions, discussion for Kim? Great presentation, Kim. Very good job. That spreadsheet would make any spreadsheet lover just drool. It was wonderful.
It's funny because that's the condensed spreadsheet from like the bigger spreadsheet.
Yeah, I know it's bigger. I've seen the bigger one.
Yeah.
So very impressive. Okay, so our due outs on that, we will bring this up in a discussion at the retreat.
Thank you.
In the and in between, we'll get you guys the proposed list versus the budgeted list. You can take a look at those. And then and also the criteria for what whittled them down. And then we'll also get you proposed budget and what buckets of money those folks will come out of for a PM and a PI. Okay.
Sorry, I was just gonna clarify one. So earlier when I asked, thinking about it, what I would like to see, it doesn't need to be the entire cost. If we can show that the cost exceeds the cost of hiring someone, that would be sufficient for what I was asking about. So just to save you what I'm sure would be a lot of legwork, it would just be, is there an offset? Yes or no? So, anyway, just want to clarify that.
Okay. Great. With that, do we have any alibis before we adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?